Hi, thanks for joining me for part 2 of the 9-patch quilt creation. In this video we'll create columns from the blocks we created in part 1 and quilt them up, but first we need to trim the blocks to the correct size. The first thing we need to do is measure the blocks we created and find the size of the smallest one. If your seam allowance was accurate, they should all measure the same. If not, simply place your ruler on the block and align the ruler lines with one of the seams. Then trim the blocks down to the size of your smallest. As you can see, I'm aligning using the top seam of the centre square. Make sure the ruler mark at 12 inch is within the block. Then trim up the right side and across the top. Turn the block twice to the right. Align the left and bottom edges of the 12-inch mark of your ruler, as you know these are straight, and trim again up the right side and across the top. This block should now measure 12 inch by 12 inch. Now you have a measurement, cut 15 squares using that same measurement from the white fabric. With all your blocks and fabric cut to the same measurements, sewing the columns together will be a breeze. Take a 9-patch and lay a white square on top of it with the right sides of the fabric together. Pin or clip across the bottom edge, making sure the two line up correctly. Sew across that edge using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Remember to backstitch at the beginning and end. Press to set the seam, then press that seam toward the 9-patch block. Repeat the process to add another 9-patch block, then another white, and continue this until you have 6 blocks sewn together. Give the entire column a good iron over and set it aside, then repeat to construct the other 4 columns. I'll pop a picture in here to show the order, but it's pretty simple. As the quilt is made up of lines, we're going to straight line quilt the entire thing. Before quilting, we need to mark up the quilt. Using a heat erasable marker and your ruler, mark a line from the seam of block 1 all the way down to the seam of block 3 so you have a continuous line to work with. We're going to be sewing 1/4 inch away from both sides of these lines. For the horizontal lines, measure the distance between 2 seams. I get just under 4 inches, so measure down just under 4 inches and mark, then just under 8 inches and mark again. Do this on both seam lines and both outer edges, then draw a line to connect the marks horizontally. Repeat this on the other plain blocks. Cut out your backing strips to 13 by 73 inches. You'll need a total of 5. Place one on a flat surface with the right side facing the table. Cut your wadding to the same size. Again, you'll need 5 pieces. Take a piece and place it on top of that backing fabric. Place the first column on top of the pile with the right side of the fabric facing you. There are a few methods for creating a quilt sandwich, and depending on the size I switch between them. For larger quilts I prefer to take the back into a clean floor and construct it there. For this one however, the tabletop is fine and gravity does some of the work for you as the layers hang over the edge of the table. Check that the entire length of the top is within the confines of the backing and the wadding. And then begin to pin from the middle block out. I use curved quilters pins, they're much easier than straight ones for this. As we already know where we're going to be quilting, we can avoid putting pins in the way. I'm adding them in the middle of each section so they're out of the way. Add plenty of pins, they're the only thing stopping your quilt sandwich from shifting as you handle it and as you sew it. With the layers all pinned together, it's time to quilt. Because of the way we're putting this quilt together, we need to leave a 1/4 inch of the edge unquilted. The best way to avoid going into that area is to mark a line at 1/4 inch all the way down. Obviously, if you're confident you'll remember not to sew into the last 1/4 inch, feel free to skip this part. Set your machine to a stitch length between 2.5 and 3 millimeters. I prefer 3 for quilting straight lines. Starting at one end of the column, sew down the entire length, keeping your stitch line 1/4 inch away from the mark you added. This is as close to the centre as we'll be sewing vertically. Sewing from the centre out is important as it gives fabrics a little wriggle room without risking them bunching up. Now you've stitched the first half of that seam, spin the column around and sew 1/4 inch from the other side of the marked line. Repeat this on the other vertical seam. Then turn the fabric so that you're working on the horizontal seams now. Start at the centre of the column and sew both sides of all the seams. You'll find it much easier to sew if you roll up the right hand side of the column so it doesn't drag on your machine. All the seams should have 2 lines of stitching, one on either side. And that's column 1 quilted. Place your ruler against the edge of the fabric and trim off the wadding. This gives you a nice clean edge to work with. With that trimmed, we can add the second column. Lay down a second piece of backing fabric with the right side facing you. Add the first column with the front facing you. We want this edge to butt up with the backing. Take column 2, remember we're alternating the columns, so this second one will start with a plain white block. Place it right side facing down on top of the pile. We need the seams to align correctly again here, so align the first and pin through all the layers. Repeat this on the other seams, then add a few additional pins to keep the fabric from moving. Once it's all pinned, carefully sew a 1/4 inch seam down the entire edge. Once that's sewn, and I suggest you do this next bit at an ironing board, we want to open up the backing fabric. Place a piece of wadding on top of that, butting up the edge with the wadding from the previous column. Fold over the top, smooth it out and pin for quilting. And here's why I say you're better doing this at the ironing board. You can flip over the backing only and give it the seam a press from the right side. Add the wadding, flip over the top and then iron again before you start pinning. Again, we know where we'll be quilting, so pop in pins where they won't be in the way. Then mark out your lines as you did previously. Go ahead and quilt that column. And that's it. Add the remaining columns in exactly the same way until they're all connected. In the next video, I'll be showing you how to create your own binding for the quilt and how to attach it simply without having to hand sew any part of it. Thanks for watching, and a big thanks to those of you who already subscribed. For those who haven't, please consider hitting that like button and subscribing for more videos.